The girl's scream died in her throat as the cold hand closed over her mouth, and a voice like winter frost whispered against her ear, "Hush, little one. They've left you to die, but I'm going to make you immortal." 8-year-old Elara thrashed against the iron grip, her small fists beating uselessly against the arm that held her. But the stranger's other hand caught her wrist with impossible gentleness, and she felt the sharp prick of something against her skin, not teeth, but a fingernail drawing blood. And then that same finger pressed to lips she couldn't see in the darkness, and the voice murmured, "You're my blood now." Wait, before the next revelation happens. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To make sure you don't miss any unexpected alliances or awakened powers, subscribe and join our circle. The game is about to change. Now, back to the scene. The clearing fell silent except for Elara's ragged breathing. Moonlight filtered through the ancient oaks, casting silver patterns on the forest floor where the orphanage matron had shoved her only minutes before. Mrs. Blackwood's final words still echoed in her mind. "Cursed child, the village doesn't want you. Let the woods have you." The hand released her mouth, and Elara spun around, stumbling backward over roots and dead leaves. The figure before her seemed to materialize from shadow itself, a man, tall and impossibly beautiful, with hair like spilled ink and eyes that caught the moonlight like polished obsidian. He wore clothes from another century, a long black coat with silver buttons, a white shirt open at the throat, boots that made no sound on the forest floor. "Who are you?" Elara's voice cracked. She pressed her back against an oak tree, her threadbare orphanage dress offering no protection against the November cold. "My name is Lucian Mordaunt." He knelt before her, bringing those inhuman eyes level with hers. Up close, she could see they weren't entirely black. Threads of crimson swirled in their depths like blood in water. "And you, little Elara Winters, are far more interesting than those fools at St. Catherine's ever realized. How do you know my name?" A smile curved his lips, revealing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "I've been watching you for weeks, ever since the incident with the fire." Elara's blood turned to ice. The fire had been an accident, at least that's what she'd told herself. She'd been so angry at Thomas, the older boy who'd pushed her down the stairs, and she'd wished, just for a moment, that something terrible would happen to him. Then his bed curtains had burst into flames while he slept. He'd survived, but the matron had looked at Elara with new eyes afterward, fearful eyes. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. Lucian laughed, a sound like wind through a crypt. "Of course you did, and that's why you're perfect." He stood, extending a hand. "Come, you'll freeze if you stay here, and I didn't save you from abandonment only to have you die of exposure." "Save me?" Elara didn't take his hand. "You said you were going to make me immortal. You're one of them, aren't you? A vampire, like in the stories?" "The stories get most of it wrong." Lucian's hand remained extended, patient. "But yes, I am what your kind calls vampire. What I am offering you, however, is not the curse of the undead. It's something far more complex." "I don't understand." "You will." His voice softened. "Elara, you have witch blood. Weak, dormant, but present. That's why they feared you. That's why the fire answered your rage. But witch blood and vampire blood, when combined correctly, they create something unprecedented. A Dampier, but one with power beyond measure." Ilara's legs trembled. She was cold, hungry, and alone. The orphanage had been cruel, but it had been shelter. The woods at night were full of wolves and worse things. And this creature, this Lucian, was offering her something. Not death, but transformation. "If I go with you," she said slowly, "what happens to me?" "You become my ward, my student, my heir." He tilted his head, studying her with predatory focus. "I am 347 years old, Alara. I have walked through empires and seen kingdoms fall. I have wealth, knowledge, and power that humans can barely comprehend. But I am alone. I have been alone for longer than you can imagine. When I saw you, this small, fierce creature setting fires with her fury, I knew. You are meant to stand beside me." "As what? Your servant?" "As my daughter." The words hung in the cold air between them. "I will teach you to control your gifts. I will give you a home, education, protection. And when you are old enough to choose, I will offer you immortality. True immortality, not the half-life of a common vampire, but something greater. A fusion of witch and vampire that has never been attempted before." Ilara's mind reeled. Daughter. The word ached in her chest. She'd never had a family, never had anyone who wanted her. The orphanage had made that clear from the moment she'd arrived as an infant, left on the steps with nothing but a name pinned to her blanket. "And if I say no?" Lucian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those crimson-threaded eyes. "Then I will ensure you find your way to the next village. I will not force you, Alara. I am many things, but I am not a monster who preys on frightened children." However, he glanced at the dark woods surrounding them. The wolves are very real, and they hunt these forests. Mrs. Blackwood knew that when she left you here. She hoped you would die. The truth of it settled over Ilara like a shroud. The matron had meant for her to perish. The entire village believed her cursed, dangerous. Even if she found her way to another town, who would take in a strange child with no family and unexplainable abilities? She looked up at Lucien Mordaunt, ancient, powerful, offering her everything she'd ever wanted wrapped in a package of darkness and blood. Slowly, she reached out and placed her small hand in his cold one. His fingers closed around hers with surprising gentleness. "A wise choice, little witch. Will it hurt, becoming like you? Not tonight." He drew her close and, in one fluid motion, lifted her into his arms. She should have been frightened, but instead she felt strangely safe. "Tonight, you need food, warmth, and rest. The transformation will come later, when you're ready, when you ask for it yourself." "Where are we going?" "Home." Lucien began walking through the forest with inhuman speed, trees blurring past them, yet Ilara felt no wind, no jarring movement. It was like flying. Mordaunt Manor. You'll find it quite different from St. Catherine's orphanage. Will there be others? Other children? No, just us. He glanced down at her, and for the first time, she saw something vulnerable in his expression. "And my staff, of course. Mrs. Thorne, the housekeeper. She's human, though she knows what I am. And Nikolai, my associate. He is like me. But you, Ilara, will be the first child to live in those halls in over 200 years. What happened to the last child?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "She was my actual daughter, Catherine. She died of fever in 1702. I tried to turn her, to save her, but I was younger then, less skilled. The transformation failed. She became something twisted, mindless. I had to—" He stopped walking for a moment, his arms tightening around Ilara. I had to end her suffering myself. I swore I would never make that mistake again. That's why I've studied, researched, prepared. Your witch blood is the key. It will protect you from the madness that took her. Ilara pressed her face against his coat. The fabric smelled of night-blooming flowers and old books. She should have been terrified by his confession, but instead she felt an odd kinship. He understood loss. He understood being alone. "I'll try to be a good daughter," she whispered. Lucian's response was barely audible. "And I will try to be a better father than I was 3 centuries ago." The trees opened suddenly onto a vast clearing, and Ilara gasped. Before them stood a mansion that seemed to have been carved from midnight itself. Black stone walls rose 3 stories high, covered in ivy that looked silver in the moonlight. Tall windows glowed with warm amber light. Gargoyles perched on the corners of the roof, their stone faces frozen in eternal vigilance. An iron gate stood open, as if expecting them. "Welcome to Mordaunt Manor," Lucian said, carrying her through the gate and up the curved driveway. "Your new home." The front door opened before they reached it, and a severe-looking woman in a black dress stood in the entrance. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her sharp eyes assessed Ilara with the precision of a jeweler examining a diamond. "So, this is the child," she said, her voice crisp and efficient. "She's half frozen and looks half starved. Bring her to the kitchen, my lord. I'll prepare something hot." "Mrs. Thorne, this is Ilara Winters," Lucian said, setting Ilara down on the marble floor of the entrance hall. "She'll be living with us from now on. Please prepare the rose room for her." Mrs. Thorne's eyebrows rose fractionally. "The rose room? But that's—" "Catherine's room. Yes." Lucian's voice was firm. "It's time. The room has been closed long enough." The housekeeper studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "As you wish, my lord. Come along, child. Let's get some food in you." Ilara followed Mrs. Thorne through a maze of corridors, her eyes wide. The walls were lined with paintings of stern-faced aristocrats, and candelabras provided flickering light. The air smelled of beeswax and old stone, but also something else, something alive and growing, like a garden in the dark. The kitchen was enormous, with a hearth large enough to stand in and copper pots hanging from the ceiling. Mrs. Thorne guided Ilara to a chair at a worn wooden table and immediately began bustling about, pulling bread from a cupboard, ladling soup from a pot that simmered over the fire. "Here." She set a bowl of thick vegetable soup in front of Ilara, along with fresh bread still warm from the oven. "Eat slowly. Your stomach won't be used to proper food." Ilara ate, and as the warmth of the soup spread through her body, she felt tears prickling her eyes. When was the last time someone had cared if she was hungry? At the orphanage, meals had been thin gruel and hard bread, given grudgingly. "Thank you," she managed between bites. Mrs. Thorne's expression softened slightly. "You're welcome, child. I won't lie to you. This house has its strangeness. Master Lucian is not like other men, but he is not cruel. And if he has chosen to bring you here, then you must be special indeed." "He said I'm a witch." "Are you?" Mrs. Thorne didn't seem surprised or afraid, merely curious. I think so. I made a fire happen, without matches." "Well then." The housekeeper poured her a glass of milk. "You'll fit right in." This house has always attracted the unusual. She paused, her voice dropping. "But you should know something, child. Master Lucian is the most powerful vampire in these lands. Some call him the Alpha, the one from whom many others descend. That means he has enemies, rivals who would hurt him by hurting you if they knew you existed. You'll be safe within these walls, but beyond them, you must be careful." Elara swallowed hard. "I understand. I hope you do." Mrs. Thorne began cleaning the dishes. "Now, finish up. I'll show you to your room." The Rose Room was on the second floor, down a corridor lined with closed doors. Mrs. Thorne pushed open a heavy wooden door, and Elara stepped into a chamber that took her breath away. The walls were papered in delicate pink roses, and a four-poster bed stood against one wall, draped in cream-colored curtains. A wardrobe, a writing desk, a bookshelf filled with leather-bound volumes, and a window seat overlooking the moonlit gardens below. "Master Lucian had me open the room this afternoon," Mrs. Thorne admitted. "He knew he was bringing you home tonight. The clothes in the wardrobe are old-fashioned, but they should fit. We'll have a seamstress come tomorrow to measure you for new ones." Elara touched the soft quilt on the bed, hardly daring to believe it was real. This was his daughter's room? "Yes, Catherine Mordaunt. She died before I came to work here, but I've heard the stories. She was 8 years old, like you, full of life and laughter. Her death broke something in the master. He's never been quite the same since." Mrs. Thorne moved to the window and pulled the curtains closed. "Perhaps you can heal some of that child. Heaven knows he needs it." "I don't know how to be someone's daughter," Elara confessed. "I've never had a family." "Then you'll learn together." Mrs. Thorne patted her head awkwardly, as if she weren't quite used to comforting children. "There's a nightgown in the wardrobe. Get changed and into bed. The master will want to begin your lessons tomorrow." After Mrs. Thorne left, Elara changed into the softest nightgown she'd ever touched and climbed into the bed. The mattress seemed to embrace her, so different from the thin, lumpy orphanage cots. She should have fallen asleep immediately, exhausted from the night's events, but her mind spun with questions. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Come in," she called. Lucian entered, ducking his head slightly beneath the doorframe. He'd removed his coat and looked almost human in just the white shirt and dark trousers, though his supernatural beauty remained undimmed. "I wanted to check on you," he said, hovering near the door as if uncertain of his welcome. "Are you comfortable?" "Yes, it's the most beautiful room I've ever seen." He moved closer, his eyes roaming over the space with something like pain. "It was decorated for a little girl who loved stories and flowers. I preserved it exactly as she left it. I told myself I was maintaining her memory, but really, I couldn't bear to change anything. It would make her death too final." "I'm sorry," Elara said softly. "I'm sorry you lost her. So am I." Lucian sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "But perhaps this is a second chance for both of us. You need a father, and I need to prove to myself that I can protect someone I love, that I can be better than I was. Why me, though? Really, there are other orphans, other witches probably. Because when I saw you, I saw her." His voice roughened. The same fierce spirit, the same refusal to be broken despite cruelty. "And your power, untrained and raw, reminded me that strength can come from the most unexpected places. You're not a replacement for Catherine. You're yourself. But you're also a chance for me to make things right." "I'm sorry." Elara considered this. "Will you teach me about your world? About vampires and magic?" "Everything. I'll teach you history, languages, combat, magic, politics. You'll have the education of a princess and the skills of a warrior. And when you're old enough, when you're truly ready, I'll teach you about the transformation, about what it means to walk between worlds as neither fully human nor fully vampire." "I'm not afraid," she said, and was surprised to find it was true. She should have been terrified, but instead she felt chosen, Wanted. For the first time in her short life, someone had looked at her and seen potential rather than a problem. "You should be a little afraid," Lucian said with a slight smile. "Fear keeps us careful, but I'm glad you're brave." "You'll need that courage in the years ahead." He stood, moving toward the door. "Sleep now. Tomorrow, your new life begins." "Lucian?" She stopped him before he could leave. "Thank you for not leaving me in the woods." His hand tightened on the doorframe. "Thank you for trusting me, little one. Sleep well. You're safe now." As he closed the door behind him, Ilara snuggled deeper into the blankets. Through the window, she could hear an owl hooting in the gardens, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She'd been abandoned in the woods to die, but instead, she'd found something she'd never dared hope for. A home, a father, a future. And as she drifted off to sleep, she thought she heard Lucian's voice in the hallway, speaking to someone, probably Nikolai, his mysterious associate. "She's here, Nick. After all these years, I have a child under my roof again. I won't fail her. I can't." And a deeper voice, rough and accented, replied, "Then we'll make sure you don't, old friend. We'll protect her together." Ilara smiled in the darkness and let sleep claim her. The next several weeks passed in a blur of lessons and discoveries. Ilara woke each morning to find breakfast waiting in her room. Fresh bread, fruit, cheese, and sometimes pastries that Mrs. Thorne claimed were traditional but tasted unlike anything from the village. Then Lucian would collect her for the day's education. He taught her in a book-lined study that smelled of leather and pipe tobacco. They started with reading and writing, though Ilara had learned the basics at the orphanage. Lucian pushed her further, introducing her to Latin, French, and even older languages with strange symbols that hurt her eyes to look at too long. "This is ancient Celtic," he explained, pointing to spiraling characters in a crumbling manuscript. "The witches of old used it for their spells. Your ancestors, most likely." The language has power of its own, built into the structure of each word. "Can you teach me to do magic? Real magic, not just accidental fires?" In time, Lucian closed the book carefully. "Your power is wild right now, responding to strong emotion. We must first teach you control. Magic without discipline is like a wildfire, destructive and uncontrollable. We'll start with meditation and focus exercises." The lessons were harder than Ilara expected, sitting still for an hour, trying to feel the energy inside her body, to trace its pathways like rivers of light through her veins. It was exhausting. But slowly, incrementally, she began to sense something. A warmth in her chest, a tingling in her fingertips. "Good," Lucian murmured during one session, his cool hand resting on her shoulder. "You're beginning to perceive your own life force. Witches call it essence. Vampires call it the blood song. It's the same thing, the energy that makes you alive, that makes you, you." Combat training came as a surprise. On her third week at the manor, Lucian brought her to a ballroom that had been cleared of furniture. Nikolai was waiting, a massive man with a scarred face and hands like sledgehammers. He looked like he'd been carved from the same stone as the gargoyles on the roof. "This is Nikolai Volkov," Lucian introduced. "He was turned 200 years ago during the Russian wars. Before that, he was a soldier. Now he's going to teach you how to defend yourself." "She's a child," Nikolai rumbled, his accent thick. His pale eyes studied Ilara with what might have been concern. "She's a child who will live in our world," Lucian countered. "She needs to know how to fight. Start simple, blocks and escapes." Over the following weeks, Nikolai taught her how to fall without breaking bones, how to twist out of grips, how to use her small size as an advantage. He was surprisingly gentle for such a large man, and patient when she fumbled. "You are faster than you think," he told her once after she'd successfully dodged 3 of his admittedly slow strikes. "Most humans, they hesitate. They think first, then move. You must learn to move first, think after. Instinct is faster than thought." Is that how vampires fight? Is how soldiers fight. Vampires just do it longer. He grinned, showing fangs, and heal faster when we lose. Ilara found herself growing fond of the gruff vampire. He told her stories of his human life, of the battles he'd fought, the family he'd lost. Unlike Lucien, who carried his grief like a cloak, Nikolai seemed to have made peace with his past. "We all lose people," he said simply when she asked how he coped. "Humans, vampires, doesn't matter. Life is loss, but also is gain. I lost my first family in war, but I gained new brothers in undeath. I lost my country, but I gained freedom to travel the world. And now I gain a little warrior to train." He ruffled her hair affectionately. "Universe takes, but also gives. You remember this." But not everything at Mordaunt Manor was comforting. There were nights when Ilara woke to strange sounds, howls that weren't quite wolves, whispers in languages she didn't know, the sound of something heavy being dragged across stone. When she asked Lucien about it, his face darkened. "This house is old," he said carefully, "and I have lived in it for many years. There are protections, defenses. Some of them have minds of their own." "What kind of defenses?" "The kind that keep us safe from those who would do us harm." He wouldn't elaborate, but that night, Ilara looked out her window and saw figures moving in the garden. Tall, thin creatures with too many joints, patrolling the grounds with inhuman grace. When she mentioned them to Mrs. Thorne the next morning, the housekeeper's lips thinned. "Those are the Sentinels. The Master created them through blood magic and old necromancy. They're not alive, not dead. They exist only to protect this estate and everyone in it. Don't fear them, but don't try to touch them either. They don't understand affection, only purpose." It was a reminder that despite the lessons and the comfortable room, Ilara had entered a world far stranger and darker than the simple cruelty of the orphanage. The first real test of her training came 2 months after her arrival. Ilara was in the garden, practicing the meditation exercises Lucien had assigned, when she heard voices beyond the manor walls. Male voices, rough and angry. "We know he's in there," someone shouted. "The bloodsucker who thinks he owns these lands! Mordaunt, come out and face the guild!" Ilara's eyes snapped open. She ran toward the house, but before she could reach the door, Lucien appeared beside her with his inhuman speed. "Get inside," he said, his voice sharp with command. "Go to your room and lock the door." "Who are they?" "Hunters." His eyes had gone entirely crimson, the black irises swallowed by bloodlust. "The Guild of St. Michael. They hunt vampires, and they've finally worked up the courage to come to my door. Go, now." But Ilara grabbed his hand instead. "You said I was your blood now. That means I don't run when you're in danger." Lucien looked down at her, surprise flickering across his face. Then, incredibly, he smiled. A real smile, not the careful, controlled expressions he usually wore. "No, I suppose you don't. But you will stay behind me, and if I tell you to flee, you run and don't look back. Understood?" "Understood." They walked to the front gate together. Beyond the iron bars, a group of men stood with weapons. Crossbows, silver-edged swords, vials of what was probably holy water. They wore leather armor marked with the symbol of a sword piercing a skull. At their head stood a tall man with a scarred face and cold blue eyes. "Marcus Drake," Lucien said calmly. "I wondered when you'd work up the courage to visit." "It's been, what, 50 years since you swore to destroy me?" "50 years since you murdered my father," Drake spat. "And now I've finally gathered enough men to take you down, monster." Your father came to my home and tried to burn it with me inside. I defended myself. If you call that murder, then you're a fool." Lucian's voice was ice. "And as for your army," he glanced at the 20-odd men behind Drake, "I've faced worse odds at breakfast." "We know about the girl!" Drake's eyes found Alara, and his expression twisted with disgust. "You've taken a child now? Are you training her to be your next victim, or have you already turned her into an abomination?" Rage flared in Alara's chest, so hot and sudden that she gasped. How dare he? How dare this stranger judge her, judge Lucian, when he knew nothing about them? "You don't know anything," she shouted, stepping forward despite Lucian's restraining hand. "He saved me. He gave me a home when everyone else wanted me dead." "The creature has already corrupted her mind," another hunter said. "We should take the girl for her own protection." "You will not touch her." Lucian's voice dropped to a deadly whisper, and the temperature around them plummeted. Frost spread across the gate, across the ground. The air itself seemed to freeze. "You come to my land, threaten my house, and speak of harming my daughter? You've made a fatal mistake, Marcus Drake." The gate exploded outward. Alara stumbled backward as Lucian moved, no, flowed, into the group of hunters like a shadow given terrible form. His hands became claws, his mouth opened to reveal fangs that belonged on a wolf, not a man. The first hunter died before he could raise his crossbow, throat torn out in a spray of arterial red. The second managed to fire, but the bolt simply bounced off Lucian's chest as if he were made of stone. "Alara, close your eyes!" Mrs. Thorne's voice came from behind her, the housekeeper's arms wrapping around her waist, trying to pull her away. But Alara couldn't look away. She watched as Lucian tore through the hunters with methodical efficiency. This wasn't the patient teacher who helped her with Latin. This wasn't the careful guardian who tucked her in at night. This was the Alpha, the ancient predator that other vampires feared. And yet, he wasn't mindless. Even in his fury, he was precise. He killed only those who raised weapons against him. 2 hunters who threw down their swords and ran were allowed to flee. When Marcus Drake charged him with a silver sword, Lucian disarmed him, but didn't deliver the killing blow. "This is mercy, Drake," Lucian said, his clawed hand wrapped around the hunter's throat, lifting him off the ground. "The only reason you're still breathing is because your father was, at one time, an honorable man, who made a mistake in his grief. But if you come here again, if you threaten what is mine again, I will not be so generous. Do you understand?" Drake nodded, his face purple with oxygen deprivation. Lucian released him, and the hunter collapsed, gasping. "Take your dead, bury them, and spread the word. Mordant Manor is under my protection. Anyone who crosses these boundaries without invitation will not leave alive." The hunters retreated, dragging their casualties. Drake shot one last venomous look at Alara before disappearing into the woods. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucian stood in the center of the carnage, his chest heaving despite not needing to breathe. Blood splattered his white shirt. His hands were still clawed, still inhuman. Slowly, with visible effort, he forced the transformation to reverse. The claws retracted, becoming elegant fingers again. The fangs shrank. The red glow faded from his eyes. He turned to Alara, and she saw fear in his face. Fear that she would be terrified of him now, that she would see only the monster. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," he said quietly. Thorns gripped and walked forward, stepping carefully around the blood staining the ground. She reached Lucian and without hesitation hugged him. "I'm not sorry," she said fiercely. "They came here to hurt you, to hurt us. You protected your home, your family." She felt his body go rigid with surprise. Then his arms came around her carefully, as if she were made of glass. "You're not afraid of me?" "I'm afraid of what would happen if you weren't here." She looked up at him. "You're the only person who's ever wanted me, who's ever seen me as something other than a problem to be solved. Why would I be afraid of you protecting that?" Lucian's eyes closed, and when he opened them again, they were suspiciously bright. "You are extraordinary, Ilara Winters. I don't know what I did to deserve you in my life, but I swear on everything I am, I will never let anyone harm you, not while I still draw breath or blood." "Good, because I don't plan on going anywhere." Mrs. Thorne approached with a bucket of water and clean cloths. "The sentinels are already disposing of the bodies, my lord, but we should get you both inside. The girl has had enough excitement for one day." That night, Ilara couldn't sleep. The image of Lucian transforming, fighting, killing, it played over and over in her mind. But it wasn't fear that kept her awake. It was a strange exhilaration. She'd seen true power today. She'd seen what she could become if she continued her training, if she accepted the transformation when the time came. A soft knock sounded at her door, and Nikolai's gruff voice called, "Ilara, you awake? Come in." The big vampire entered, carrying a tray with hot chocolate and biscuits. "Mrs. Thorne thought you might be hungry, and I thought you might want company." "Thank you." She accepted the cup gratefully. "Nikolai, have you killed people like Lucian did today?" He settled into the chair by her bed, his expression somber. "Many times." "I was soldier before I was vampire, remember? I killed men in war who were just like me, scared, far from home, following orders. And after I was turned, I killed to survive. I killed to protect myself and those I cared about. Is not something I am proud of, but is not something I regret either." "Does it get easier?" "No. If it gets easier, then you lose part of your humanity. The trick is to remember why you kill. Lucien today, he killed to protect you, to protect his home. That is not same as killing for pleasure or power. Intention matters." Ilara sipped her chocolate, thinking. The hunter said Lucien killed his father. And Lucien told truth. The father attacked first. But this is the tragedy, yes? The son sees only that his father died. He does not see the full picture. He wants revenge, so cycle continues. Nikolai shrugged. "Is the way of the world, little one. Vampires and hunters, we have been fighting for centuries. Both sides think they are righteous. Both sides are sometimes right and sometimes wrong. Which side are you on?" "I am on side of my family." He tapped her forehead gently. "Lucien is my brother, by blood if not by birth. You are now also family, so I am on your side. Is simple." I wish everything were that simple. In the end, it is. Complicated philosophy is for people with too much time and not enough problems. He stood, ruffling her hair the way he always did. "Now sleep. Tomorrow we train harder. Today showed me you have spirit, but you need skill to match it. If hunters come again, you should be able to defend yourself, not just watch." After he left, Ilara did finally sleep, and she dreamed of transformations, of becoming something powerful and terrible and beautiful, something that could stand beside Lucien and Nikolai without fear. 3 years passed. Ilara grew from a frightened 8-year-old into a confident 11-year-old with skills that would have seemed impossible at St. Catherine's orphanage. She could speak 5 languages fluently, read ancient texts on magic, fight with knives and staffs, and most importantly, she could control her power. The fire that had once erupted from her rage now answered to her will. She could light candles with a thought, create shields of flame that protected without burning her, and even, on her best days, call lightning from a clear sky. Lucien watched her progress with something like awe. "You're stronger than I expected," he told her after she'd successfully defended herself against Nikolai in a sparring match. "Your witch blood is more potent than I initially realized. You may not even need the vampire transformation to become formidable." "But I still want it," Ilara insisted. "When I'm older, you promised." "I remember. And when you turn 16, if you still want to undergo the ritual, we'll discuss it then. But Ilara, you should know, the process is dangerous, more dangerous than anything you faced so far." "I'm not afraid. I know. That's what worries me." He smiled sadly. Catherine wasn't afraid either. The years of peace couldn't last forever. Ilara was 12 when everything changed. It started with rumors in the nearby villages, disappearances, bodies drained of blood but marked with symbols that no vampire would use, symbols of dark magic, of sacrificial ritual. The local authorities blamed Lucien, of course, but he had alibis. He'd been at the manor every night the murders occurred, witnessed by Ilara, Nikolai, and Mrs. Thorne. "Someone is framing you," Ilara said, studying the sketches of the symbols that Nikolai had managed to obtain. "These aren't vampire markings, they're witch signs, old ones." Lucien leaned over her shoulder, his breath cold against her neck. "You're right, but why? Why would a witch frame vampires for murders? What's the purpose?" The answer came a week later, in the form of a letter delivered by a raven that crashed through the study window. The bird was already dead, its neck broken, but the scroll tied to its leg was pristine. Lucien unrolled it, his face going pale, an impressive feat for someone with no blood flow. "What is it?" Ilara asked. "An invitation, or rather, a summons." He handed her the letter, "From the Crimson Court." Ilara read the ornate script. "Lucien Mordaunt, Alpha of the Western Territories, you are hereby summoned to appear before the Crimson Court to answer charges of breaking the ancient covenant. You are accused of turning a witch child without permission, thereby creating an abomination that threatens the balance between our kinds. You will appear at the next full moon, or we will come to collect you, and her. Lady Seraphina Nix, High Arbiter of the Crimson Court." "What's the ancient covenant?" Ilara's hands trembled as she held the letter. "A treaty signed 500 years ago between vampires and witches." Lucien began pacing, his controlled demeanor cracking. "It states that neither faction will turn members of the other without permission from both sides. The penalty for breaking it is death for both the vampire and the hybrid created." "But you haven't turned me yet." "They don't know that, or they don't care." He stopped pacing, his jaw clenched. "Seraphina Nix has been my rival for 2 centuries. She's wanted an excuse to destroy me, and now she thinks she has one. The murders in the villages, the symbols, she orchestrated all of it to create suspicion, to make it believable that I would break the covenant. So we tell them the truth. We explain that I'm still human, that you haven't." "It won't matter." Nikolai entered the study, his face grim. "I have heard of this court. They are Kangaroo Court, yes? Verdict is decided before trial begins. They want Lucien dead, so dead he will be, no matter what truth is." Ilara felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "Then we run. We leave the manor and go somewhere they can't find us." "There is nowhere the court cannot reach," Lucien said softly. They have agents in every major city, alliances with witch covens and hunter guilds. We'd be fugitives for the rest of our lives, however short that life might be. Then we fight. Against the entire Crimson Court? Ilara, there are 12 of them, each as old and powerful as I am, some older. And they have armies of lesser vampires at their command. He shook his head. We'd be slaughtered. So what do we do? Ilara's voice rose. Just give up? Let them kill you? Lucian moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens where the sentinels patrolled. There is one option. One very dangerous option. Tell me. We complete the transformation. Tonight. If you're already a Dhampir when we arrive at the court, they cannot claim I'm planning to break the covenant. I've already broken it. And if you survive the process, if your witch blood protects you as I believe it will, then you'll be powerful enough to help me fight. A Dhampir has never faced the court before. They won't know your capabilities or weaknesses. Nikolai swore in Russian. Lucian, she is 12 years old. You said you would wait until she was 16, when her body and magic were more mature. I know what I said. Lucian whirled on him, anguish clear on his face. But if we don't do this, she'll die anyway when they come for us. At least this gives her a chance. A chance to become monster or die trying? I'm already a monster to them, Ilara shouted, silencing both vampires. You read the letter. They called me an abomination, and I haven't even been turned yet. My whole life, people have seen me as something wrong, something that needs to be destroyed. At the orphanage, in the villages, and now the Crimson Court. I'm tired of running from what I am. I'm tired of being weak. She turned to Lucian, her decision made. Turn me. Tonight. Teach me what I need to know, and then we'll face the court together, as father and daughter, as equals. Lucian searched her face, looking for doubt, for fear. He must have found only determination, because slowly he nodded. Very well, but Ilara, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. The transformation is agony. You'll feel your body dying and being reborn simultaneously. Your heart will stop beating. Your blood will be replaced by something else, something dark and hungry. And there's a chance, however small, that your mind won't survive intact, that you'll become a mindless revenant that I'll have to destroy. I trust you, Ilara said simply. I've trusted you since the night you found me in the woods. I'm not going to stop now. Mrs. Thorne appeared in the doorway, her face drawn. I've prepared the ritual chamber, my lord, though I pray you're making the right choice. So do I, Lucian whispered. The ritual chamber was in the deepest part of the manor, below even the wine cellar. Stone walls covered in ancient carvings surrounded a circular platform inscribed with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Candles burned in alcoves, their flames an unsettling green color. Ilara stood in the center of the circle, wearing a simple white dress that Mrs. Thorne had provided. Lucian stood before her, and Nikolai and the housekeeper waited at the chamber's edge, witnesses to what was about to occur. Last chance to change your mind, Lucian said. I'm not changing my mind. Do it. He took her hand, his thumb tracing the veins visible beneath her pale skin. The process has 3 stages. First, I'll drain enough of your blood to bring you to the edge of death. Second, you'll drink my blood, ancient vampire blood, undiluted. Third, your witch magic and my vampire essence will war inside you. If you're strong enough, you'll forge them into something new. If not, I'm strong enough. Lucian pulled her close, his lips near her throat. She felt his fangs extend, felt the sharp points press against her skin. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then he bit down, and Alara's world exploded into sensation. It should have hurt, but instead it was ecstasy and horror intertwined. She felt her blood flowing out, felt Lucian drinking deeply, and with each swallow she became weaker, colder. Her legs gave out, but he caught her, holding her upright as he fed. The candle flames dimmed, sound became muffled, her heartbeat slowed. 60 beats per minute, then 40, then 20. This is dying, she thought distantly. This is what it feels like to leave the world. And then Lucian pulled away, his mouth stained red, and he bit into his own wrist. Blood welled up, black as midnight and somehow luminous. "Drink," he commanded, pressing his wrist to her lips. The blood touched her tongue, and Alara gagged. It tasted of iron and darkness and things that had never seen sunlight. But she drank, swallowing convulsively, feeling the liquid burn its way down her throat like molten metal. Her heart stopped. For one eternal moment, Alara Winters was dead. She floated in a void without light or sound, and she thought, is this all there is? Just nothing? Then her magic ignited. The witch blood in her veins recognized the invasion of vampire essence and reacted with violent rejection. Fire blazed through her body, not metaphorical fire, but actual flames that erupted from her skin. She screamed, dimly aware of Lucian shouting something, of the symbols on the floor glowing brighter. The vampire blood fought back, smothering the flames with cold darkness. Ice formed on her skin, her hair spreading out across the floor. The battle raged inside her, heat and cold, life and death, magic and hunger. "Choose," a voice whispered in the darkness. It might have been her own voice, or something older. Witch or vampire, you cannot be both. "Watch me," Alara snarled back. She seized both powers with mental hands she hadn't known she possessed. The fire and the ice, the magic and the hunger. She forced them together, compressed them, melded them until they could no longer be separated. The pain intensified beyond bearing, and she screamed again, but she didn't let go. "I am Alara Winters. I am daughter of magic and blood. I am both." Something fundamental shifted inside her. The war ended not with victor and vanquished, but with fusion. The fire and ice became a single force, neither hot nor cold, but something entirely new. Her heart, which had stopped, beat once, a heavy, echoing thud that shook her entire body. Then it beat again, and again. Her eyes snapped open. The world looked different, sharper. She could see individual dust motes floating in the air, could count the fibers in Nikolai's shirt from across the room. She could hear Mrs. Thorne's heartbeat, rapid with fear. She could smell Lucian's blood on her lips, and beneath that, the blood of every living thing in the manor. And she was so hungry. "Alara," Lucian's voice was cautious. "Can you hear me? Do you know who I am?" She turned to face him, and he flinched, actually flinched from whatever he saw in her eyes. "You're my father," she said, and her voice was her own, but somehow more. It resonated with power. "You're Lucian Mordaunt, and I'm Alara Mordaunt now, I think, your true daughter." The relief on his face was palpable. "You survived. You actually survived." He laughed, a sound of pure joy and disbelief. "How do you feel?" "Hungry, strong, different." She looked down at her hands and gasped. Her skin was luminous, almost glowing, with patterns of light that shifted beneath the surface, like bioluminescent creatures in deep water. "What am I?" "You're the first successful witch-vampire hybrid in recorded history," Lucian breathed. "You're extraordinary. Nikolai approached carefully, studying her with professional interest. Her eyes, they changed color. Ilara blinked and realized he was right. She could feel it, her eyes shifting from their natural brown to crimson when she thought of blood, to silver white when she touched her magical core. They were reflecting her dual nature. "We need to feed her," Mrs. Thorne said practically, "before the hunger becomes too strong. I've prepared blood, my lord, animal blood, as you requested." But when they brought her the cup of pig's blood, Ilara's stomach revolted. She could smell that it was wrong somehow, too simple, too empty of what she needed. "It's not enough," she said, confused. "I can't drink this." Lucian frowned. "Most vampires can survive on animal blood if necessary. It's not pleasant, but it sustains us." "I'm not most vampires." Ilara closed her eyes, focusing inward on the hunger. "I don't need just blood. I need magic, life force, the essence that Mrs. Thorne mentioned. Animal blood doesn't have enough of it." "Then what do you need?" Nikolai asked. "I need blood from something with magic." She opened her eyes, looking at Lucian with dawning understanding. "From vampires, witches, or other supernatural creatures. Humans wouldn't work either, not unless they had witch blood like I did." This was unprecedented. A vampire who couldn't survive on human blood was unheard of. It should have been a weakness, but Ilara realized it might actually be a strength. She would never be tempted to prey on innocents. Her hunger would only be satisfied by beings who themselves possessed power. "Then drink from me," Lucian said, rolling up his sleeve. "I have more than enough magic in my veins to sustain you." "Are you sure? Won't it weaken you?" "I'm 350 years old. I can spare some blood for my daughter," he smiled. "Besides, there's a poetic symmetry to it. I gave you my blood to create you. Now you drink from me to sustain yourself. It's fitting." Ilara bit into his wrist, her fangs extending instinctively, and drank. This blood was right. Rich and complex, tasting of centuries and power and the bond between them. She felt strength flowing into her, felt her body accepting and integrating the sustenance. When she pulled away, the wound on Lucian's wrist sealed immediately. He looked down at her with something like pride. "Now you're truly mine," he said softly, "bound by blood in every sense. Whatever happens at the court, we face it together." "Together," Ilara agreed. Over the next week, they prepared for the court appearance. Ilara trained constantly, learning the extent of her new abilities. She discovered she could still wield fire and lightning, but now she could also move with vampire speed, heal from injuries that would have killed a human, and see in complete darkness. The combination made her formidable. But the most surprising discovery came during a sparring session with Nikolai. When he grabbed her arm, she instinctively pushed back, and a wave of force exploded outward, throwing the massive vampire across the room. "What was that?" Nikolai groaned, picking himself up. "I don't know." Ilara stared at her hands. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted you to let go." Lucian had been watching from the doorway. "Telekinesis, or something like it. Your witch magic and vampire strength combined to create a new ability." He sounded excited. "Ilara, you might be able to do things neither witches nor vampires can do separately. You're not just a hybrid, you're an evolution." They spent days cataloging her powers, and the list grew impressive. Vampire strength, speed, and healing. Witch, fire and lightning manipulation. Enhanced senses beyond even vampire capability. Telekinetic bursts when threatened. The ability to sense magical signatures, identifying vampires, witches, and humans by their essence. No need for sunlight aversion. Her witch blood protected her from the traditional vampire weakness. "The court is going to be very afraid of you, Mrs. Thana." Thorn observed, watching Alara create a ball of flame in one hand while floating a book with the other. You represent change, and old powers never like change. The full moon arrived too quickly. They traveled to the court's meeting place, an abandoned cathedral in the mountains where vampires had met for centuries to discuss politics and pass judgment. The building was beautiful and terrible, all soaring Gothic arches and stained glass windows depicting vampires as angels rather than demons. As they approached, Alara counted at least 50 vampires in the courtyard. Guards, she realized. The Crimson Court was taking no chances. "Remember," Lucian murmured as they dismounted from the carriage. "Stay calm. Don't let them provoke you. And if things go badly, run. Nikolai will help you escape." "I'm not leaving you." "Ilara, I'm not leaving you," she repeated firmly. "We do this together or not at all." The cathedral doors opened and a vampire in crimson robes emerged. "Lucian Mordaunt, you are expected. Come." They entered together, Lucian, Ilara, and Nikolai. The interior was lit by hundreds of candles, and at the far end, seated on thrones that had probably been stolen from actual royalty, sat the 12 members of the Crimson Court. Lady Seraphina Nyx sat in the center throne. She was breathtaking, pale skin, raven-black hair, eyes like chips of emerald ice. She looked perhaps 25, but was likely ancient. Her gaze fixed on Ilara with predatory intensity. "So," Seraphina purred, "this is the abomination. She's smaller than I expected." "She's my daughter," Lucian said coldly, "and she's not an abomination. She's a miracle." "A miracle?" Another court member, a male vampire with white hair and cruel lips, laughed. "You've created a hybrid that should not exist, Mordaunt. The Covenant exists for good reason. Vampires and witches are meant to remain separate. Our magics are incompatible." "Clearly not," Ilara said. Lucian tried to hold her back, but she shrugged him off. "Since I'm standing here, very much alive and very much both." Seraphina's eyes narrowed. "Bold for someone whose life hangs in the balance. Tell me, little hybrid, do you understand what your existence means? You are a threat to the natural order. A weapon that could be used by either vampires or witches to destroy the other. I'm not a weapon. I'm a person." "Are you?" Seraphina stood, descending from her throne with liquid grace. "Let me see what you truly are." She moved with speed that even Alara's enhanced senses barely caught, and suddenly the vampire lady was right in front of her, one clawed hand reaching for Alara's face. Instinct took over. Alara's hand shot up, catching Seraphina's wrist. Flames erupted from her palm, and the ancient vampire hissed, jerking backward. But Alara didn't let go. She channeled more power, fire and force combined, and threw Seraphina across the cathedral. The lady crashed into a pillar hard enough to crack the stone. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Guards rushed forward, but Nikolai intercepted them, his massive fists breaking bones. Lucian moved to Alara's side, his own claws extended, ready to fight. Seraphina rose slowly, her dress torn, her expression one of shock and fury. "You dare strike a member of the court? You tried to hurt me," Alara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I defended myself. Isn't that what all of you do? Defend yourselves against threats?" "She has a point," another court member said, a woman with bronze skin and kind eyes. "Seraphina, you did attack first. To test her capabilities? Without permission from the accused." The bronze-skinned vampire stood. "I am Zara of the Eastern Territories. Lady Seraphina, your vendetta against Lucian Mordaunt is well known. This trial feels less about justice and more about revenge. Don't be absurd. I agree with Zara." A third vampire, this one appearing as a young boy, but with eyes older than mountains, spoke up. "The girl is clearly powerful, and clearly in control of herself. If she were a mindless monster, she would have killed Seraphina just now, not merely thrown her. She showed restraint." Murmurs spread through the court. Seraphina looked around, realizing she was losing control of the narrative. "The Covenant," she began. "Is outdated," Lucian interrupted. "It was written in a time when we understood neither vampire nor witch magic well enough to know if combination was possible. We've proven it is, and more than that, we've proven it can be done safely, with the right preparation and the right candidate. Elara isn't a threat to the balance. She is the balance." "Pretty words," the white-haired vampire sneered. "But how do we know she won't use her powers against us? How do we know she's loyal to vampire kind?" "I'm not loyal to vampire kind," Elara said bluntly. "I'm loyal to my family, to Lucian, Nikolai, and Mrs. Thorne. I don't care about your politics or your feuds. I just want to live in peace." "And if we don't allow that?" Seraphina had regained her composure. "If we declare that you and Lucian must die for breaking the covenant?" Elara smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Then you'll have to try to kill us. And I think you saw how well that worked out a moment ago." She gestured to the cracked pillar. "I'm 12 years old and untrained in combat. Imagine what I'll be capable of in another decade. Do you really want me as an enemy?" The threat hung in the air.